Hi, I'm Christina.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Wayz Podcast. Today our guest is an actor, author, and advocate for mental health. He's courageously shared his own struggles with mental health and hopes to illuminate the road for others. He's a remarkable individual and somebody I'm proud to call a dear friend of mine, Mallya. Thank you for coming.
No, thanks for having me here. That intro was way too good for me, but now I'll try and live up to it.
Oh my gosh, no, you know how much I care about you as a person, and your message is just so amazing. That's why I'm so excited for you to be here today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here as well, and I think that it's amazing that you guys are doing this and just getting voices to continue to what did you say? Illuminate the road.
Illuminate the road.
Illuminate the road and to talk about important things with hopefully the aim of helping more people.
Yeah, because what I love in your message is pretty much like you share your own personal stories in order to just kind of hope everybody relates to you and realize that like we're not alone. A lot of times people are going through the same struggles, and when we have open communication and conversations about these things, I feel like it just brings everybody together closer, and it like promotes positive well-being, and that's what our goal is here on this podcast.
Yeah.
So you're perfect.
Well, happy to be here.
Yeah, on that note, I'm going to give the floor to Matt because he wanted to ask that first question.
So I went through and, read your book, which, by the way, was just incredible. Oh. Just going through and you talking about so many different things in your life. But I do have one very small detailed question from the book. Yeah. Is that, did the secretary ever make it out of the closet?
It was an office.
So the office.
It was an office. And the reason I want to clarify that because like a closet is a really small space.
Yes.
So
okay.
The office was slightly bigger, but yes, I can confirm she made it out.
She's all right.
She was all right then. This is like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows where she is now? But she came out. She was alive. Yeah. She was very upset. But she made it.
For me, it was so fun and the reason I asked that question and stuff, and it's just so fun to listen to that story was just because of, you talked about being such like a mischievous kid, but from like such a creative and just like a heartfelt standpoint. And I thought it was just really cool as well that like your dad also played into that prank as well. And it was just really, really cool to see. So I was just, I really loved being able to read that little excerpt there.
Yeah, it was. I think that excerpt that you're talking about was kind of like put into obviously talk about what we did. Locking her in the office was kind of fun, but it was more to sort of highlight the relationship that I shared with my dad at that time, and being an only child myself, him being an only child. I think that we both had somewhat of a bond because of that, and I certainly, being an only child, had to create my own fun when I was younger, and I'm sure he had to do the same thing. So that's why I was a mischievous parent.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And also, when we were going through sort of things to talk about and things to ask you and discuss, one of the biggest things that we talk about in the world of therapy, and you discuss so much in your book about mental health and the advocacy for therapists, which I was just like, yes, because it's something that a lot of people I feel like don't go in such detail about, which you did. And one of the biggest things that we talk about in therapy is often the miracle questioning. And that's, what would your life look like if? And then you would fill in the blank. And so I do actually have a miracle question for you, if that's okay to start with, because I wanted to know, what would your life look like if you had complete control of everything?
Oh, wow. The part of me that has OCD wants to say that it would be total bliss. Right, because OCD being a condition where you sort of strive for control and having things a certain way. So that part of me wants to say, well, if I could have control over everything, I'd be really happy and I'd have no issues and everything would just be calm and chill. But then the other part of me, and the part of me that's done all this self work and gone on this kind of self-work journey and all of that stuff would say that I think it would be a pretty boring life to have control over everything. I think one of the hardest, but also one of the most enjoyable parts of letting go is the unexpected and the unknown. And I think it's in the unexpected and the unknown and not having to have control over everything where a lot of the fun in life is, and a lot of where the learning takes place, when you can just kind of let go of control and allow things to happen organically and deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Christina's talked about kind of like thriving in chaos in a way. And you talk a lot about that. And in a way, sorry, you also discuss that in your book. And so I would kind of love for you to kind of discuss a little bit more in like what that sort of means to you guys and how you sort of allowed that to be a part of your life while not also letting it like control who you are too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, so when I was I reread your book for this podcast. And when I was going over it too, it's just, I must say, like, rereading it, I know you, because I know you personally. I know you're such a great person, and rereading it just made me see how absolutely amazing you are and like grounded and insightful in so many things. And you sharing your journey throughout like all the chaos as like a child, feeling alone, feeling like you didn't have a stable foundation to kind of grow on, and then like dealing with other things that were thrown at you throughout your life, like things that you never expected, once again, like depression, OCD, like problems with the alcohol and stuff like that. For me, I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you about these things if you didn't go through them. You know what I mean? And that's where it's like, don't get me wrong, like everybody's pain is valid and emotions are emotions. But I'm so, like, I say this all the time, I'm so forever grateful for the struggles I've been through, because it's made me here today. And right now you have this great, amazing platform to promote well-being to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that all of our life experiences, right, regardless, the struggle, the good, the bad, everything that just comes as being a human being, does shape us into the person that we are. But I think the important thing is, and, you know, we're all on the same page, I'm sure, with this, is you're only able then to use it if you identify it and do the work around it.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of people, I think everyone has, let's just say, struggle as a broad term, right? It's going to be subjective to each person, like what struggle means. But everyone has gone through some sort of struggle in life. It's then, how do you take that struggle or experience and use it to then come out the other side? Right. And I think that's the important thing as well, is that I think it's not just the struggle that we've been through, but it's also being able to really identify what we've been through, how it affected us. And now, okay, how can I deal with that and move forward from it?
Yeah. I say all the time to people, I'm like, are you going to let this defeat you, or are you going to turn it into your superpower? Because like when you turn it into your superpower and you turn it into like the positive outlook, so much good can come from that. Like you might have needed that thing to get you to the place that's going to make you grow the most and where you are today. And also through like different types of therapies and stuff, one thing that I've learned a lot is like, you're right, life would probably be a little boring without emotions, right? Like sometimes I feel like we are oblivious to how emotions really influence our day-to-day life, and when you actually sit with them and feel them, how amazing they can be. Like that's great that we actually have the ability to like feel compassion and sadness and happiness and joy. And when you actually have a little bit of gratefulness for that and you realize the importance that it plays in so many things, like that's just game changing. So once again, I said I like realized that through many different types of therapies. What are some things that have worked for you?
In terms of like therapies and
like
and
things to get you to that realization in a way where you're just like, I let go of all control. I can only control certain things in my life, and I'm grateful for those things I can't. You know what I mean?
Well, therapy as one was, and I talk about it in the book, was a game changer for me, and definitely the start of the journey. In fact, the start of the journey was when I was at drama school in the UK in 2016. And suddenly like I'm in this conservatory program where, you know, you're just being opened up physically, mentally and emotionally every day. It was only then I realized like, wow, how much I'd been kind of holding and shielding from and ignoring. And then they like completely opened me up, and it was like the floodgates had opened, and like I'm suddenly feeling things at a depth that I hadn't felt ever before. So I was like, all right, what do I do with this now? And therapy was the first thing. And I think the most important thing with therapy, and you know, you'll know this better than anyone because it's what you do, is I think just having someone impartial to just talk to without feeling like you're being judged.
Yeah.
That was the most important thing straight up, where I felt like, okay, I can talk to someone who's just going to listen. Yeah. And then I talk about this in the book as well. I think it's really important to find the right therapist. You know, and when I say right therapist, I'm not saying that there's good, bad, anything like that. It's just that human beings, right?
Yeah.
We gravitate towards certain personalities and certain people. And for me, I've always gravitated more towards females when it's come to that sort of stuff. Like growing up, for me, the teachers that were able to get the best out of me were women. When it came to therapy, my therapist is a woman, and I just know that, right? So that fundamentally, straight off, knowing that information meant that, okay, I'm going to go and find a female therapist because I feel like that's what's going to be the best for me. And then I did go to one therapist, and it just wasn't a fit. You know, it was one of those, like you see in the films, where he's sitting there taking notes while I'm kind of like lying on the couch.
You're like, what are you writing right now?
I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're sitting there making notes, and I remember it so clear, you know, and this is like in London, in like one of those old like Victorian buildings when there's like wood everywhere. And like the whole environment made me feel like I am not being helped right now. I am just being judged. And when you feel like that, you're not going to want to open up, right? What like nothing in that environment made me feel like I want to be vulnerable to this person. And then I came back here to LA, and I found a lady here, Danica, who's just unbelievable. And it's not just her personality and her warmth and her guidance that has been so key to me. It's the setting and the environment that she created. Made me feel like I want to open up to you. You know, she didn't have to get anything out of me. I automatically walked in. I was like, I feel comfortable here, take it all, kind of thing. And I know I've kind of gone a little bit off tangent to what you asked.
No, not at all.
But I think going back to your question is that what's helped for me is not just finding the right people, but finding the right environment in order to feel like I can truly be myself and express myself and learn about myself.
No,
I think environment is key.
It is. It's so important. You know, I mean, even for myself, when I was working in a private practice, I had a giant like bookshelf, and there was tons of like random like old therapy books. I'm like, this is not conducive for me or for like the kids that I work with, or even my teenagers. Like, so I turned one shelf into Harry Potter. One of it was Disney, and then the third one was Star Wars. And it was just like, but it's really cool because they had kids that came in like, someone had to have been a fan of at least one of them at some point.
Oh my God,
you know?
can you imagine being a
so,
kid going into a therapist's office and it's like all these serious books, and I would be scared.
Yeah.
But 100%, right? Not just a kid, right? An adult.
Yeah.
Think of going in at the age that we all are now. I'm a little bit older than you, but it's the same thing. I feel like I also feel like, and maybe this is a me thing, but I'd love to hear like how you guys think of this as well. Anytime I feel like I'm being like in school, I didn't like school, right? I couldn't sit still. I thrived at all the activities where I was left to like do my own thing, right? At drama school at 27 or 28 years old, my movement teacher, Anna, in like my end of year assessment, probably gave me the biggest insight into my life that anyone's ever given me, which is like when Sid is free and is free, just feels free to do his own thing, he shines and his work is unbelievable and there's a glow to him. But when he feels like he's being told what to do, he shuts off and just closes down. And it's like anytime I feel like I'm being taught or preached to or anything, I reject it. And you go into these therapists' office where are all these books and all of this stuff. I now feel like I'm back at school, like I'm in a lesson or something. Like, I don't want to listen to that.
Yeah.
Right. But if you make it feel like that, like, you know, this is fun at the same time, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's not just for kids. I think adults, you know, think kind of the same way. You know, of course, there were people who love school, but
yeah. That's what I mean. That's why I'm like, I really love how you decided to try out different types of therapists before just being like, oh, this is what it must be. Like, I'm just going to nix it right now. It's not for me. Because I feel like a lot of people get turned off the first time that they don't find like an automatic click with somebody, you know? And on that note too, like I'm the same way. Like if I walked into somewhere and I felt like somebody was judging me and the room was stuffy and it's just like gloomy, I don't want to be in that room just like sitting there in general, let alone talk to you where I feel like I'm being judged. At the same time though, like I can also see the other side where like some people grow up in a very like constructive type of environment where like they thrive in like the traditional way, and that's okay too.
100%. Yeah. I'm not saying that one way is better than the other.
Yeah.
I think it's, but I think
find your way is what you're saying. Yeah.
I think find your way, and what's important about that is know what works for you.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to, you know, do something which might go against what you initially thought.
Yeah. Because there's beauty in the unknown. There's beauty in discovering things. You're like, can I ask you, when you went into acting, did you think that it was going to bring up all this stuff for you? Like all these emotions and this like what more well-being in a way. Did you know, or were you just like, I think I want to be an actor, and you tried it?
I mean, I think that there were reasons why I wanted to go into acting and stuff like that. Like, but in terms of like, did I think it was going to bring up all of this emotion? You know, I think I had an idea that like what acting is, and it involves emotions and stuff like that. But it's until you're actually in the trenches, everything is great as a concept. And I think all of us understand concepts, but it's very different actually experiencing something as opposed to having an idea of something. And even with acting, I'm just talk about that for a minute. Like I started acting when I was 2011, so however old I was then. And it took me till like 2016, like the first 3-4 years of acting, what I thought emotion was, I realized didn't even scratch the surface until I went to school in the UK and they opened me up in other ways, right? But again, I wouldn't have known that had I not tried something different.
Yeah, completely. That's why I'm like, you never know. Like if you have a calling for something, I encourage people, I'm like, do it, because you never know what's actually going to come from it. And I just think that's so beautiful. So is there any, like, what's your opinion? Because you are a therapist. So when people walk into your office, what do you notice?
I mean, you know, the biggest thing is like, you know, my main focus was with kids. But that being said, you know, when I worked with my adult clients, the biggest thing that people came in was they were just scared to share things at first. Because a lot of people too, it's like, I'm with a stranger. I don't know what's appropriate to share, what's not appropriate to share. They're kind of like in this like weird imbalance of like, you're playing a game of guess who, because you're like, okay, you want to talk about this, but we can't talk about it on this steps. Okay. So I can only go 3 feet under, you know what I mean? Versus 6. So then it kind of goes in sort of a strategic way, because you end up really kind of figuring out sort of who that person is. And and then as you kind of ask more questions, then it gets deeper and deeper. And that kind of then brings me to like my next question too, was like, you talked about how your therapist is the reason, like one of the reasons you made this book. And like she talked about how like she really encouraged you in ways to help write this book. And I don't know if is that.
She didn't really actually have anything to do with the writing of the book.
Or
write
but
the
like
book or anything like that. I think where she was helpful was, I think where I can give her a lot of credit for the book is, had I never started with her, I never would have found myself in the place where I was open and vulnerable enough to write the book. Right.
And so that's why I was kind of wondering, like, what were some of like the things that you guys talked about to like bring up sort of that like vulnerability and things that were kind of going on like in your life? Where were some things like you felt and like safe enough to create that trust with her?
She just allowed me to be me, you know, and met me where I was at, instead of trying to get me to meet her at where she thought I should be. And I think that's very important. You know, I would, because of the OCD and everything, I would go in with like lists, being, I want to talk about this week. And she just, and she'd go along with it. Some weeks we would repeat the exact same stuff. And she'd never make me feel like, okay, you're an idiot, or this is stupid, or you're regressing, or you're going backwards, nothing like that. She'd let me be me and guide me very gently into what was best.
Yeah.
Right? But never trying to, she never tried to mold me into, you know, an idea of what she thought I should be, right? Or how I should be fixed or anything. She just let it organically happen.
So in ways, did she kind of like open up the door for you to find the answers on your own? Because I feel like sometimes therapists will be like, no, I think this is something that's like wrong with your life, or you could look at it from like this perspective. This is probably the right way. So like, I feel like whenever I've been with therapists, a lot of times like they just give you the tools for you to discover what you kind of already know deep down.
That's it. Like she yeah, you're absolutely right. She let me sort of find things organically myself while guiding.
Yeah.
Right. And then also what was good about it was, and I, you know, you can tell us more about this, but any good therapist, it's one thing about uncovering what you're feeling in the moment. But then if you really want to move on from it or grow from it, go deeper and figure out, like, if you want the flower to bloom, as they say, right, you got to figure out the weeds underneath. Yeah. And she was very good at that. She's like, okay, this is it. Let's go back, see where it's coming from and work on that. And I think that was very helpful, as opposed to just like sort of plastering over the cracks, being like, well, you're happy now, go into the world kind of thing. It's like, no, let's figure out where this is coming from so we can really do the work.
No, truly. And that's the thing, like, that's where it was really amazing for you to talk about that in the book, and like how that, so much of that like encouraged you to like move forward with details like further in the book, which was just incredible to see. So it's just, I love that sort of compassion in a way that, and also true that like that trust is, what we call the therapeutic rapport, is so important and so massive. So I just really, like, as a therapist reading that book, it was like, it was just such like a win in a way for it. It's just like, yes, because this is what so much that we aim for and we shoot for and we want our clients to feel, but no one ever talks like about that, you know, in a way. But it's like, no, at the end of the day, like, my therapist gave me the bravery to talk about XYZ, to help me go deeper, to understand ABC, you know. And so whatever those things, you know, may be, it's just, it was really cool for you to accentuate that into words on paper, which was awesome. So.
A question I have for you too was, you mentioned while like writing your book and telling your story and talking about OCD, it actually brought up more feelings of OCD.
Yeah, that was a hard one.
Yeah, so kind of, can you share your experience with that? And do you think it's healthy to do things like that, though, at the same time? Like, force yourself to, in a way, like, relive a trauma that you thought you were over?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you're talking about right there is, like, one of the big sort of, lessons they try to teach you when dealing with OCD is something called exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Right? Which is literally...
they tell you to expose yourself to. Is that what that is?
Well, I mean, that what I did wasn't quite exposure therapy, but exposure therapy was basically, you know, you could, if there are certain things that trigger obsessive thoughts that then lead you to doing compulsions.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you have two choices. You can either avoid that situation forever, right?
Okay.
Or put yourself in the situation and then learn how not to react to it. Right? I think there's this book, the OCD workbook.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned it.
Yeah, which I work for. And I think the example they use is, if you have a fear of snakes, right? Is this fear of snakes? So like, well, if you have a fear of snakes, you have a choice, right? Just don't go anywhere near snakes, right?
Yeah.
But then what happens if you start dating someone that has a pet snake? Well, what are your choices? You either avoid ever going to that person's house, or you put yourself in the situation where the snake's there, and whatever fears and compulsions or everything that arise, you learn to deal with them in the moment by exposing yourself to the very thing that you're afraid of.
Okay.
Right? So that's actually like one of the things. When it came to writing it, I think just what triggered me was, you know, I in that chapter especially, I talk about experiences that I had, particularly around religion and God and all that sort of stuff, which were very, very, very painful times of my life and experiences for me when those things were happening. So to kind of like relive that sort of stuff, it's going to bring up stuff.
Yeah.
But the other thing that like is prevalent in OCD is perfectionism. And I think writing that chapter was one of the only times where I felt like I have to write this perfectly, right? Because subconsciously it was triggering those old thought patterns. So that was a particularly hard chapter to write about. But I think the reason I was able to do it is because I'd already done enough work on it to then identify when I was getting triggered. And then be like, okay, this is what's happening. This is why it's happening. I have the tools to deal with it, and I will.
Can I ask why religion was brought up in your OCD chapter?
So there's something called religious scrupulosity. I think it's exactly what the term is. And moral scrupulosity. These are two types of OCD that you can have. Thing with OCD is there are so many different types that you can have.
Did you know this? I don't even know this
idea.
really. Yeah.
No. I knew what OCD was as an overall
general term,
right? And now if you go and ask most people, like, what do you think about, what do you think OCD is? And they'll say, oh, it's about being clean and neat and tidy, right? And yeah, that is definitely one aspect of it. But there are so many different subsets of it within OCD. And just because you suffer from one form of OCD, like there's something called harm OCD, where you're constantly scared of hurting someone or even hurting yourself. If someone suffers from harm OCD, they don't necessarily have to suffer from things being neat and tidy. Right? So it's not like you suffer from one and then you suffer from everything, right? There are subsets of it. So religious scrupulosity that I mentioned is this fear of upsetting God, basically, or a higher power, or whatever it is you believe in. And then the moral scrupulosity is like the fear of like upsetting other people, right? So that's where you get people pleasers and that sort of stuff comes from. But the religious one came because I was brought up at home as a Hindu, because that's what my family were. But at school, like I went to boarding school in the UK, which was a Christian school, and I'd go to chapel and sing all the hymns and say the Lord's Prayer, all that sort of stuff, which was fine. Like there didn't seem to be any pressure. Like there was no pressure preached to us at school about do this or you're going to get into trouble, right? Whereas when I was at home, like my grandmother would constantly be like, do this or God will be angry. Now you say that shit to a kid, right? You're going to believe it. First of all, this is a person who you're meant to look up to, telling you something. So you're inclined to believe them, right? Because why would you question what a grandparent's saying to you? And then it's like, oh God, well, I've been brought up to believe that God is this almighty, all-seeing, all-powerful being. I don't want to upset them, him, her, whatever you want to call it, right? So then what happens is that it sort of drives you to feel like you have to behave impeccably and perfectly. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to upset this being that's going to punish you. Yeah. But you see that in Catholicism a lot. Oh yeah. Like, right? Catholicism is and our acting coach, who I work for, who I teach at his studio, he talks about this because he was raised by nuns. Basically, would tell him.
Wait, Anthony, he was?
Yeah. And Anthony would literally talk about everything was based on punishment. Right? I mean, you original sin. You're literally taught that you are born as a sinner.
No, and you're here to like repent and make up for those sins.
You're literally here to repent.
Your entire life is just so I can go to heaven. Like I have to,
Right? And now when you put that kind of pressure on people, right, it's going to do things to them.
Yeah.
No, completely. I agree with that 100%. On that note, then, how did you go about getting rid of kind of like that OCD attachment to religion where you're like, I have to please this God, or like, what do I resonate with? What religion is meant for me? Like, what do you kind of follow or preach now, honestly, in a sense?
I don't think I ever got rid of it. Okay. And I don't think I ever will get rid of it. I think OCD is what OCD is. It's a chronic condition. So it's one of those things where you're never going to get rid of it. You just learn how to manage it, right? Yeah. So it's like someone that has like, I don't know, like a chronic back issue. for a lot of the time, it might be fine. But then you might just wake up one morning and you have a massive
There's things that
flare-up.
trigger
You know what
it,
I mean?
yeah.
That flare up, it's like, God, right, well, what am I going to do with the flare up?
You take care of yourself.
You take care of yourself. It's the same thing with OCD. Like, it can be dormant, but then something might trigger you and you might have a flare up. And those thoughts about God and religion and all that shit do still come. But at least now I'm able to identify it as part of the OCD.
Yeah.
So I can see the thoughts, still feel freaked out by the thoughts, but then just kind of naturally let them run their course, as opposed to feeling like I have to jump in to compulsions or doing something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just let them pass and realize that they pop up. This is a natural part of being human, is
Part
these
of human.
intrusive thoughts.
And it's like saying like, okay, I'm a human being. I have OCD. It's a condition I have,
yeah.
right?
Self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance. Like, I can't get rid of it, but what am I going to do? But this comes back to awareness, right? I wouldn't be able to do this today if I hadn't gained the awareness of what it was. And that comes from doing the work.
Yeah.
I was going to say that with awareness is like, if somebody feels like there's something, they're like, I don't feel right. I feel like maybe I do have obsessive compulsive disorder. Maybe I do have problems and other things, depression, anxiety, stuff like that, but they don't know where to start, or like they may not even think something's wrong with them. They just have a feeling. How can somebody actually start of being self-aware? Like, what do you think is the first step into like going down this road?
It's a hard one, that, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I just think that there's like, okay, the internet is a great place. A lot of very useful information, a lot of shit as well.
Yeah.
So you got to be very careful. But and I God, I'm hesitant to even say this, because you know a lot of people will. I have friends who like feel sick and they're straight on the Mayo Clinic website and like they'll self-diagnose.
Oh, same here.
themselves.
I'm like, please do not.
Well, you know this
Oh
better
my
than
gosh,
anyone,
yeah.
right? Being a nurse, right? You suddenly now you self-diagnose yourself and something.
They
which
have
is
this
like,
cancer, this type of weird fungus or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's a dangerous. It can be a slippery slope if you're an obsessive type.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's plenty of resources out there where you can gain information on certain things. And then if you feel like, okay, and then there's no harm going and speaking to a professional about it.
Yeah. And I love that too. We talk about this all the time. Professionals are a great tool, but then you also have that person who's going to argue like, I don't have insurance. I don't have money. I don't have the time, even though I don't believe like you make the time for yourself. But what would you encourage then if somebody's like, I can't afford to go see a professional? So
that's one of some little blowback I got from talking about therapy and medication, right? I was on medication for the longest time, Prozac and all that stuff, which is given for depression and stuff. For me, I was actually given it because of my OCD. It's actually something they prescribed for that. And then I was like, well, you're fortunate you can afford these things, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue that, right? What am I going to say?
Yeah.
But there are so many other tools available to us that don't cost money. Meditation is free. Yoga is free. All of these things are available for you to do. Going for a walk outside and just taking 20 minutes out in fresh air in nature is sometimes all you need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And guess what? That costs nothing.
That's all I need a lot of times.
Literally,
I'm like,
right?
I need to go lay in the sun really quick. I'll be back.
Exactly. But that doesn't cost anyone anything.
Yeah.
And I think that we've created a system where we feel like we're reliant on other people to help us. And a lot of the time that does cost money. Whereas actually there are so many things that are available to us in our everyday lives. It's just about figuring out what works for us.
Yeah.
Now, lying in the sun works for you, right? Going and lying in the sun on my back on the beach kind of thing, I'm going to get bored after like 5 minutes, right? So I know that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Journaling, yeah? People love journaling. I think journaling is the fucking most boring thing in the world, right? And I've written 2 books. So, but it's about figuring out what works for you and and understanding that all these tools are available at no cost. It just requires you to do a little bit of work to figure out what is it that works for me.
What is some of the things that you have discovered through your OCD journey that has worked for you?
I think, acceptance is key, I think, to everything, right? The acceptance. And by the way, I want to say this is still an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
it's acceptance that this condition exists and that I'm never getting rid of it, right? It's there. It's chronic. So what am I going to do about it? You know what I mean? Am I going to wish I didn't have it?
Yeah.
Cool. I could sit here wishing all I want and
Yeah.
wasting energy on trying to remove something. But if it's going to be there, then really you have in life, you have two choices, right? And anytime you're in a situation that you don't like, you really have two choices. Either extract yourself from the situation or make peace with the situation. Well, with OCD, that first option isn't on the table. So I'm really only left with make peace with it. And making peace, and this has been another big struggle for me, but something I'm getting better at, making peace doesn't mean being comfortable with it. Making peace doesn't mean becoming comfortable. Making peace doesn't mean getting rid of the pain that goes along with it. Making peace is literally just accepting what it is for what it is without trying to change it.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do. And like you said, it's an ongoing journey. Like same with a lot of things in my life too. It's just like you think that you're kind of getting better at one thing, right? And then another thing comes up that brings in. It's just like, no, it's not going to get any easier. I mean, or actually I take that back. It does get easier. No, it's not going away. But the more that you practice like mindfulness and you know yourself and self-awareness, the more tools you have in your toolbox to conquer it the next time it comes up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of accepting it then. You're just like, I know I'm strong enough to get past this. I will. It's here. So like, let's move forward with it. And besides the whole just like self-awareness, which I love, there's two questions I've been like meditating on for this. Is one, I want you to kind of share your meditation because you do a type of meditation that I feel like is not what most people think about with meditation. Most people think like you have to lay there quiet, like either listen to music or sit up straight and do this. So I want you to share your own meditation techniques because I feel like our viewers then can use them to their advantage and try them and see if it works for them. Because if it does, great. And then also I think, because you mentioned it too in the book, and I think this is something that I struggle. When did you get to a point where like, you're like, I have to make a change. I am worthy of making a change and I'm worthy of taking the time for myself. Because everybody else is like, I have this to do, I have that to do. Like, I'm okay. I don't deserve to have like feelings of comfort or like know myself, or I don't have time to. Everybody else is more important than me. So those are my two questions is like, what kind of meditation do you do? Share that. And it's also like, when did you start feeling worthy of taking time for yourself to heal yourself?
Yeah. So on the meditation, I tried the sit straight, legs crossed, back straight, all that shit.
Yeah.
And I found that I was getting more stressed out because I was like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not sitting straight. You know, there's so anything that has so many instructions, I'm like, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, this is meant to chill me out. Suddenly now you're giving me something. I need to sit like this. Legs have to be like this. Hands need to be like this. Breath needs to be like this. Back needs to be like this. And I was like, by the time that I've tried to remember all of this shit, I'm more stressed out than I was before I did it. So I was like, this doesn't work for me. And then I came across transcendental meditation, TM. I can't remember exactly how I found it, but I think one of the actors that I was looking at the time was doing it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, someone in the same sort of space as me is doing this. Let's check it out. And then I went and I learned more about it, and I went and saw them and researched it and learned the technique and the practice. And the first rule of it was there are no rules. Like, you can't do this right, you can't do this wrong. Like, everyone gets a mantra.
I love that.
And the mantra is like a word, and that word is specific to you.
Do you pick it?
No, they give it to you.
Okay.
And then that word is specific to you based on, I don't know, whatever their system is. And then the way to just do it is to sit there, shut your eyes, and what you do is you start, a way in is to start thinking about that word, and then just to let it be. Just to let it, instead of thinking about it, just to let it be an idea that's just like floating through you.
Yeah.
And then automatically when that happens, it tends to take you deeper and open you up, and you get that relaxation because you're not
focused on all the have-tos.
Yeah. Right? They're like, you want to lie down. You want to sit up. And for the longest time, I was falling asleep in all these meditations. Then I went back to the guy that trained me, and I was like, I keep falling asleep. Like, what the fuck? And he's like, good. He said the reason you're falling asleep is because that's what your body is lacking. But if you start crying or laughing or whatever the emotion that comes out in these things, it says that's what your body's trying to release. If you start sleeping, it means that's what your body's needing at that moment. That's why you're falling asleep. It's not because you're doing it wrong or you're bored or anything. That's literally what you require in that moment. So suddenly now you frame it like that. It's like, shit, man, like this is great. I can do this because I can't do it wrong.
Yeah.
I love that he said that though, like listening to your body will always show you what you need. So many of us are like, no, I'm okay. This doesn't mean anything, but it's like, no, like you needed to give yourself permission in a way to just like take a nap.
And does this type of does this type of meditation like change like each time you do it? So like, does it like, it's like one time you do it, you might start laughing. Another one, you might start crying.
Yeah.
Does it completely change? Or is it more just like?
Yeah, I felt nauseous through it. And what they say is like, it's whatever's coming up is what your body is trying to like purge in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even laughter is a purge, right? So it's whatever you're trying to purge. So if it's sleep or if it's yawning, it's purging that tiredness and letting you rest.
Whoa.
Yeah, like I even say too, during my breath work, sometimes I'll start crying, I'll start screaming, I'll start kicking. I'll literally just lay there and be like, I don't want to breathe. You know what I mean? So I love that. Also too, really quick, how did you find this again? And like, who gave you the word?
No, it's a very well-known technique. It was set up by, I want to say.
Because you said somebody gave you the word to focus on. How do people find?
The way that it works is, and this is fun. This is interesting. So there are centers all around the world. The Transcendental Meditation is like,
oh really?
It's like an international organization. It's got centers. The one here used to be in Beverly Hills. I think now they've moved to Santa Monica. And you go there, and there are the trained practitioners, and you sign up for the course, and you have to pay. But it's one of those where it's like you pay what you want to pay. Right? No one
donation
you or
based,
anything.
yeah.
And the reason is, they say the reason we do this, the reason we take it is not we're a non-profit. It's so we can then go and train inner city people and like underprivileged people for free, kind of thing. And they do that, like they do that, which is big on it. And then you go there, and it's like you go and see them a couple of days, and then they teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
You do like a little puja, which is a Hindu ceremony. It's like where they do like with the fruit and like what you saw at my wedding.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I
like
love that.
So there's like a spiritual component to it as well. And then they take you in a room and they whisper you your word, and you're not meant to share your word with anyone, right? Your word will be your word. I've researched more about this. I believe they have like a list of 15 words. Right? So you'll get one of 15.
Okay.
Words, right, depending on whatever year it is, and then you just go off and then you do it. That's it. Now it's gotten a little bit of like bad rap because it's like, well, meditation's free, should be free to everyone. Why are they charging you? And I was like, well, with that logic, yoga should also be free, but you're going and paying $50 to go and fucking sit on
in a mat.
Yeah, in a yoga class
somewhere. So like, by that logic, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that simple. And today, I maybe do it once a week. It's not even part of my practice anymore. I've evolved to another meditation, which is listening to another mantra that was given to me by an astrologist last year, that I have on my phone. And I just listen to it on repeat. It's
just
funny.
A mantra you listen to?
So Christina was at my wedding.
Yes. Which, by the way,
it's a fabulous wedding.
Yeah, I know. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're a married man.
I am, yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Thank you. And depending when this comes out, it's, at the time of shooting it's been a month. So it's good. But we had a Christian ceremony, and then we had the Hindu ceremony.
Yeah.
And if you remember the Hindu ceremony, the pundits, which are like the priests, they were doing all these.
It was so fascinating to watch. Yeah.
Like this, and it was all very nasally.
Yeah.
Right. It's because they're very big on. It's not just the words they say in these mantras; it's the sound vibration. Right. That's why it's very nasally, and so they're very big on vibration and sound. So I have a mantra which is very similar to that, and I just listen to it for like 20 minutes. Shut my eyes and let it play.
Is this a mantra that's like readily accessible to the public, or is this something that just
No, these ones are all accessible to the public.
Okay.
This one that I'm currently listening to is specific to, and again, like if you're into all of this stuff or you believe this stuff, but like Indians and these astrologers are all very big on stars and planets and alignment and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And depending on when you were born, at the time of your birth, where you were born, right, they can do your charts based on like what goes on in your life. And as per my chart, right now, they were like, Mars is something that's very important to me. So this mantra is very specific around the planet Mars.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I just listen to it, and it gets me into, more than anything, it gets me to sit still
And
for 20
relax and in
minutes.
a good
That's
headspace
it,
for
yeah. I might not even come out of it relaxed. I might actually come out of it pissed off, because it's like what the transcendental meditation guys
Yeah.
does. He said whatever comes up is what you're trying to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are frustrated and you're pissed off and you're angry and you're getting all of this stuff, don't see that as doing it wrong. See that as a purge
Wow.
that's coming up and being purged out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like emotions are totally valid. And like if you don't release them and let them out, they're stored somewhere in the body.
Yeah.
Like it's just things that you've accumulated over time. So like let that shit go. Definitely. And that's how I even started like my meditation journey in a way, as somebody mentioned meditation to me and I knew I couldn't sit still in silence, like back straight. So I just started I went on YouTube and I Googled meditation stuff and I just started listening to different things that like different affirmations, different sounds, like it's proven to like sound therapy, like the vibrations do help your nervous system. And that's how I like went down into this rabbit hole of meditation and mindfulness. So I love that you brought that up because it is accessible to anybody. Also too, unless we have anything else to say about meditation.
I just want to say, I want to know what it is so we can put a link down below for this video, like so people can have access to like figuring out what those, like
The transcendental
yes.
meditation,
the transcendental, or like the mantra stuff that you did
the
too.
mantra stuff. I'll have to try and figure out where we can find that online, where
Yeah.
it is. But the transcendental stuff, like we can, I want to say it's again, we'll put the actual link in it, but I think it's something simple as just like tm.org.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right?
cool.
And then you put in your address and it will tell you where your closest center is. And you can go and do it.
Beautiful. Because that's the biggest thing. I was just like, I know our viewers are going to be like, I want to know, where can I find this,
No,
and stuff. So that's
definitely.
why I just brought that up.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say on that to your viewers is go and check it out. But just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Like you might think it's a load of shit. And that's also totally valid.
Yeah.
But I feel like the more you can experience, the more then you can figure out what works for you. That's one of my big things. Like, so I teach acting as well, right? Christina's in the studio.
And you,
stuff like
when
that.
you said like being free though too, I wanted to actually mention that because it's like in the studio when he's doing his thing, you can see that like glow in you, and it's just like coming naturally, like from source or something, where you're so energetic. You say the most profound things, and you can tell you just love what you're doing, and it impacts so many people. Actually, like this man is literally a mentor to so many people in the studio. They love him.
No, it's and I appreciate you saying that. I think it's it is very gratifying, knowing that you're sort of helping someone in whatever small little way on their journey and them achieving their dreams. But one thing that I always say is, I was like, everything that I'm teaching you, what I try and do is I try and teach them a range of techniques and tools. Right? Because for me, I've trained at so many different places that I've learned so much from so many different places. And then what I've done is just taken the best bits from each place and figured out what process works for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to explain to the students, is that experience as many different types of this as possible, as many different teachings, trainings, techniques, all that sort of stuff, and then figure out what works for you. And I think there's a parallel between that and when it comes to self-work. Try as many different types as you can and then figure out which one works for you.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, there's no one universal sort of.
Completely. Yeah, like we're friends, and you just said you could not lay on a beach all day like in the sun, and that's what I love to do. Everybody's different, and that doesn't mean it's like one way's right, one way's wrong, one way's better, one way's worse. Like it's just what's true to you. I say this all the time. I'm like, we're all individually unique for a reason. Like express that.
Yeah.
So I love that. And getting back to my other question too is, where did you start to like make actually time to find out these things? I feel like a lot of the viewers, and even me at one point, I'm like, I'm good. I know I'm stressed out. I know that like things aren't right. I know I have this past trauma that like is influencing me in some way, but I don't have the time. Like when did you actually sit down and you're like, I'm taking my space. I'm doing this for me and it's not selfish.
So this is where I think having OCD benefited me. The one little benefit of having OCD is I knew I had a lot of shit going on, and I didn't feel right. So I was like, well, now what can I do to feel perfect? Which is OCD. So that drove me into wanting to be the best version of myself I could be. And that drove me into doing all the self-work. That need to be perfect.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you very quickly slapped in the face with the reality that there is no perfect. And that's, you're never going to reach whatever you think perfection is. But it certainly got me on the road to trying to be perfect. And even though, let's just say, the end goal was misguided because perfection isn't a thing, everything I learned on the road ended up serving me.
Yeah, I get that. I like to say, once again, because I'm just like this positive person, I'm like, everyone's perfectly imperfect. Like, you're perfect the way you are. Like, don't question it. But also, too, I know briefly in the book you went over, like, you literally had a section on it where you're like, my grandparents or my family, or I was getting all this input of how I should live my life from other people. And I like felt scrutinized in a way for it. But at one point I'm like, I'm staying true to who I am. Like, how did you get, once again, like that kind of ties into this. How did you get the courage to be like, some people might judge me for the decisions that I'm having. Some people are coming to me like with these things I don't want to hear. It's not even about me. It's about them. But like, it's lowering my energy. Like I don't want to hear about it. How did you get that like stance in yourself to be like, I can't do this. Like, this is me. I respect your opinion. I respect what you need to hear, but like, I'm taking my space from you.
The truthful answer to that is, I don't know. Honestly,
that's okay.
I don't know. I was at a time. It happened at a time when I made the decision to leave the family business and go and do acting and everything.
Yeah.
I was 24, 25.
Yeah.
And shit, I had no self-awareness at that age, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, I could come up with like, wow, I just had this enlightened moment and I felt like it was in my truth. That would all be bullshit. Like, because I don't know what it was.
It was just something.
I think I've always been someone that's kind of marched to the beat of their own drum. But where that's come from or why that came, I don't know, really.
How did you also learn to like set boundaries? Because with family members, that was a big thing that you talked about when you left India and you came to LA.
Yeah, again, that's been something that's difficult and probably still is somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
Again, this is going to be the best answer that says, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I think it all kind of went hand in hand, the decision of wanting to leave and then the decision of wanting to leave. I think the boundaries almost became a byproduct of that, as opposed to something, do you know what I mean, that I had to consciously think about. I think just by wanting to leave and making the decision to leave, the boundary or some sort of boundary was already created organically.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about that on our podcast, like setting boundaries with people, but still like having love and appreciation for them, but recognizing like, hey, that this is where you're at in your life. This is where I'm at. We're kind of at
acceptance part of it. That's what I love. He's like, I finally
so
learned,
huge.
like, you accepted your dad just for you guys are two completely different people, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I think that was really cool to see. So I always like asking people that question because I get a different answer every single time. So like for you, I know you said like you didn't quite know exactly what was that moment, but was there a situation where you kind of realized you're like, oh, I'm at a crossroads with any specific family member and you're recognizing that you needed to create separation?
Yeah, I mentioned this actually in the book, and it was with my dad. I think we had a long chat. I can't remember when it was, but 2017 maybe. And I laid out all the issues that I had, or at least what I thought our differences were, and we both agreed that we're just very different people, and that's okay, right? You can still coexist, but by being very different. Yeah. And I think that right there, that kind of open chat, paved the way for a relationship based on acceptance
and just mutual respect instead of
mutual
trying
respect
to
instead
like
of trying
change.
to mold that
Yeah.
person into the idea of who you want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that.
I feel like that's just such a freeing thing, honestly, is when you're finally just like, don't get me wrong, I wish we had like a closer relationship or this and that, but like I accept you truly for who you are, and I'm done kind of like I'm letting go, releasing this fight in me to try to make you the person I want you to be, because like that's not your responsibility or your burden. Unfortunately, we cannot change people. Like they have to either want to change themselves, or if they like who they are, then like that's who you are. And we've even spoken about this too, like yeah, as a child especially too, like I've opened up how it's like it's so easy as a kid like to idolize your parent, and because that's who you want them to be, right? They're supposed to be like the superhero in your life that's supposed to like protect you and be everything. But unfortunately, as we grow older, we realize that like our parents are just people. Like they're not these superheroes that we thought they were when they were younger, and like we want them to have that good relationship and want that relationship, but like they are who they are. So I remember we've had that conversation recently, and like I expressed that about my dad too.
Yeah,
so I think it's so important.
I know, and honestly, like also seeing you on your journey, like we've known each other almost exactly 2 years now, and just seeing, you know, when we've gone on hikes and spoken about this kind of stuff, and to see how you've evolved and changed.
Thank you.
and how your perspective towards people in your family and others has changed, has also been, I think it's one thing going through it yourself, but it's also very inspiring to see someone else do it right in front of you as well. And I think that sort of inspires me, gives me confidence and stuff like that.
Well, you've been an equal part in my journey as well. So
no, it's nice to see it.
Yeah, that's why like finding somebody who you can like confine in and like go on these journeys with and just support you. It's like once you find somebody like that, or people in your life, like hold on to them, respect what they have to say, take it with a bit of salt, you know what I mean? But then like do what's true to you, and they'll be there to support you and encourage you along the way. Yeah. Definitely. No, I love that, because like you've definitely been such a support system for me also. So on that kind of note too, there was one other question I wanted to ask is, did you know this? I was always curious about this. You have a business degree, right? Or that's what you went to school originally for.
I have a degree in it, yeah.
Did you know going into it that it was probably not the right fit for you?
Yeah, I actually applied to do politics and I didn't get the grades. I got rejected.
So
and you, by the way, you got rejected from like 5 schools, and you only made it to 1, or was it 4?
Yeah.
Wait, did you really?
Yeah. I think that's in there.
Yeah,
is it in
that's
there?
why I read it.
I must have missed that.
We in the UK, I don't know if it's changed now, but we have this whole thing called UCAS, which is the college application process. And you're only allowed to apply to 6 schools, max, right? It's not like here, like, I don't know how many here, it's unlimited. Right?
Yeah.
Here you can have your first choice, your second choice, your backup second choice, your third, like whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. There it's 6. And, you know, 3 of them were like long shots. But I was like, oh, this would be cool if I got in. And then,
good for you for trying. But
the thing that happens, right, is that you have to apply, and in the UK you have to choose your major up front, right? It's not like which is crazy to think of, like an 18-year-old. What do you make these decisions in? But whereas, so like if I wanted to go to Durham University, I had to say Durham to study business management.
Oh, really?
Manchester University to do politics.
What if you wanted to switch halfway through?
You'd have to restart the course again. So half the schools I applied to do politics, half the schools I applied to do business. And then you have to write a personal statement, right? And in the personal statement, you have to talk about like where you are and why you want to study that subject. Mm-hmm. So my personal statement was all over the fucking shit, because half of it was about why I wanted to do politics, half of it was why I wanted to do business. The business schools were like, why is he talking about this? And the politics schools were like, why is he talking about this?
So you use the same one for every school?
It's one submission to everything. Yeah.
It's this hilarious.
One portal and a submission to everything. And I got rejected from all 5. Queen Mary, the one that I got into, asked me to go for an interview, and then they offered me a place to do politics, said that I needed to get these certain grades at A-level, which A-levels are like year 12 exams. And you have to get grades. Once you're offered a place, it's not conditional like here, where it's like, you know, just don't break the law and you can get in. You still have to take exams to get in. I didn't get the grades to do politics. And then they called me and they said, well, you can't get in for politics, but we have space on the business course. You want to do that? I said, fuck it, take it. And I did take it. And I got the second highest degree you can get. And then I think about it now. At the time, I was like devastated.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I mean, now I have a master's degree in acting. So I don't think I did too badly.
No, not at all. But but when you were applying to schools for business, did you know you wanted to do acting? Were you just doing it because like that's what your parents kind of expected?
I don't know if I wanted to do acting, but I think I definitely wanted to do something. It's hard to say.
Like creative in a sense.
I was always creative. I just don't know if I knew it that I wanted to do something creative, because I don't think it was ever I don't think I really allowed myself to ever think what I wanted to do, because it was always kind of instilled in me that you're going to go in the business. So that was like what was always on my mind.
Oh, I didn't know that's how it played out. That's so interesting to hear. Well, no, I don't think it worked out bad for you at all, because now you have this master's and you're doing fabulous out here in LA.
It's funny because it's like, I don't want to knock the school system or anything like that, because education is very important. Kids.
It is.
This. But at the same time, I think it's, just because you're not a fucking model student in school doesn't mean that you can't have a life for yourself and stuff like this. Like I found some old school reports when I was back home a couple of months ago. Like my mom got them in the garage in like boxes, and it was like English teachers being like, he's gonna have a hard time, like he can't apply himself, he's struggling, putting me down.
Yeah.
And now I have a #1 nationally best-selling book.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the fuck they are. So like, I'm sorry, I'm saying this. Like, one of them was having an affair with someone else, and I'm like, cool. Like at 17 years old, 16 years old, you told me basically that he's gonna have a hard time in life.
Especially you said an English teacher or something, did you not? And now you're an author.
So I'm like, the reason I bring this up, I think, is part of a wider point, which is don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do, because nobody knows you better than yourself.
Yes.
And secondly, to anyone out there who deals with youth, let's just say, and we've talked about it when we met last week. Please be careful about the language you use around children.
Yes.
Oh, completely.
And youngsters, because that shit sticks with them.
Oh,
It
yeah.
does.
And this could have knocked me down a very different route.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Constantly being told, well, he's this, he's that, he can't do this, he can't do that. I mean, it could have broken my confidence.
I will never forget when I was 18, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and they took the test, and the psychologist sat across from me, looked me dead in the eyes, and goes, "I'm shocked you've made it this far." And just like ends it. Oh yeah, that is stuck.
I'd be like, well, I did.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. If somebody looks at a child that young and says like, "Ooh, you're gonna struggle," they're right there. You're like predetermining this thing in their head, and they're gonna fixate on it. Like, I'm never worthy. I'm never able to do this. Like, it's ingrained in them, and that's not okay.
Yeah. No, agreed.
I'm like, let's choose empowering things over limiting things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean,
That was such a beautiful statement. I love it. Thank you for that.
I mean,
it was very well put, and just statements like that I feel like is what really resonates with people, and they need to hear sometimes. It's just like straight to the point. So we have a few more minutes on, and since we're on the topic of children and stuff like that, I know you had a question about his children's book.
yes, I do. In regards to your children's book, I want to know, who does the dog represent for you?
So it's based on a real dog. My dog, Duke. And I think Duke, well, first of all, he represents what anyone who has a dog or a pet probably sees, which is unconditional love and support. Yeah. Right? But I think Duke also represents the teacher that I wish I had at that age, that could have explained these things to me in a way that Duke explains it to the young boy in the book.
That's amazing. And I just want to say like that is just so profound being able to sit. And because the thing is like sometimes we all want that support.
Yeah.
We all want that someone is like, hey, you're having a not great day, but guess what? It's okay.
Yeah.
And that, I love that. So that's one of the biggest things. I was like, man, like as I was reading that book, honestly, I saw myself in the way I've talked to my clients and my kiddos and in the way Duke talked to you. And I really just loved and appreciated that. I was like, I got to know who this Duke is, like who the voice comes from and stuff. And I just love that. That's where that came from. So, and then also the second thing was I wanted to read an excerpt from your book on page 88 that talks about what I've learned from this is how important it is to work through our issues and allow ourselves time to process and heal from the pain we've experienced. Otherwise, we can end up happening. That is that you carry the anger and the fears, insecurities, judgment, resentment, etc., into everything else you do in your life and take it out on the wrong person. And you talked about this part of the book from your childhood perspective. And so I just kind of would love for you to also kind of share like where that sort of came from and also who maybe that like the people that like you did take some of that out on.
So I think that exact excerpt was, I think it was from the chapter on divorce. And in that I'm talking about my mom and dad, because my dad had another family that I didn't know about, and I think that caused me a lot of pain that I didn't realize. And of course, because I was living with my mom, she would bear the brunt of this misdirected anger.
Yeah.
Where I was angry about the divorce and all of these things, thinking that I was angry at her, when actually it was anger towards other people, right? She just happened to be the metaphorical punching bag because she was there, right? And I was taking out that anger on her, thinking that she was the villain. And then as I got older and did more work on this, I realized that anger was actually aimed elsewhere, not at her. So yeah, that's where that's from, particularly. And I think I've seen other family members, my grandmother being one who had a divorce of her own. My dad's mom, God, at least 60, 70 years ago. And at her age today, still holds on to that anger and that bitterness and that resentment and takes it out on everyone else. So I think what I wrote, what I was trying to get to in that is that it's important to identify where this anger is coming from so you can deal with it without it being taken out on the wrong people.
Yeah. I just loved how like self-aware that statement was, because it's so powerful in those moments to sit there and recognize it and say like, hey, like this is where that came from. So it just, those were two things from, especially like just being, working with kids. It's like, man, like it's something that so many kids deal with, and even teenagers, even young adults into adult years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we deal with it so much, but it's something that we don't quite know how to grasp or quite talk about in that sense or way. So I really, it's just really stuck out to me so much. I was like, I just want to read this and talk about it because I just love that so much. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that because it's truly like hurt people do hurt people. And like you even said in the book too, it's such a fabulous book. You were just like, I like to meet people with compassion that are angry. And I feel like that's just a huge realization too, is realizing a lot of times like the people who are lashing out on you for oftentimes things that are not your fault or in your control, like it's a direct reflection of them. And that's the thing though, is when we talk about all these different therapies like meditation and going to therapy and have open conversations like this, that's when we start to heal ourselves so we don't lash out on other people and we just break these constant chain of like anger and hate in the world, I hope. Yeah. Like that's the goal, is for us all to just be like more well-developed, emotionally mature human beings in hopes to create a brighter future for everybody.
Truly.
So yeah, on that note, I mean, do you have anything else you want to ask before we close, or?
No, I think that was my main thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to say to our viewers before we?
No, just, to you guys, thanks having me on and for the questions as well. And I just always hope that, like, anything that any of us do, we're talking about things like this, is that if it can help one person out there feel less alone or seen, or like, that they're not alone, then it's a job well done. So as long as this can help maybe one person, then it's well worth it for all of us.
Completely agree. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
truly.
really appreciate it. It's been so much fun. And thank you guys for listening. Till next time, I love you.
All right. Thank you so much.